You said it today, or yesterday, or so many times you stopped counting. Someone asked how you were doing, and without thinking, without pausing, without even checking if it was true, you said it, "I'm fine." And then you moved on, and they moved on. And the real answer stayed exactly where it was, somewhere behind your ribs, waiting. The two words that end more conversations than any argument ever could. Most people assume that saying "I'm fine" when you're not is just politeness, social lubricant, a way to keep things moving. But psychologists who study emotional concealment have found something far more interesting underneath that automatic response. Something that tells you a great deal about how a person learned to exist in relationships, about what they believe will happen if they tell the truth, about what it costs them at some point in their life to need something from another person. This is not about being fake. It is about being human in a very specific and very exhausting way. James Pennebaker, a psychologist at the University of Texas, spent decades studying what happens to people who chronically suppress what they actually feel. His research found that people who consistently inhibit their emotional expression do not just hide their feelings from others. Over time, they begin to lose clear access to those feelings themselves. The suppression becomes so automatic, so well practiced, that the person genuinely struggles to locate what they are feeling beneath the habit of saying they are fine. The mask and the face start to look the same from the inside. That is the first layer of this, and it is darker than it sounds. Because if you cannot feel your own feelings clearly, you cannot communicate them. And if you cannot communicate them, the people around you cannot respond to what is actually happening. And so you move through your relationships carrying something heavy and completely alone, not because nobody cares, but because the signal you are sending says everything is okay. You train the people around you to believe you, and now even when part of you wants to be found, the training works against you. Why do people build this habit in the first place? That is the question worth sitting with. For most people, it starts early. Psychologist John Bowlby, whose work on attachment theory became one of the most influential bodies of research in modern psychology, found that children develop very specific strategies based on how their caregivers respond to their emotional needs. When a child expresses distress and the caregiver responds consistently with warmth and presence, the child learns that expressing need is safe. But when a child expresses distress and the caregiver responds with dismissal, irritation, withdrawal, or simply an inability to handle it, the child learns something very different. They learn that showing how they really feel creates distance instead of connection, that needing something puts the relationship at risk, that the safest version of themselves is the version that does not ask for too much. And so they develop the skill, the smile that arrives before the feeling does, the "I'm fine" that comes out faster than any honest answer could, the ability to read a room and decide in less than a second that this is not a place where the truth is welcome. That skill keeps them safe as children. It becomes a prison as adults. Here is what makes this particularly hard to untangle. People who habitually say "I'm fine" when they are not are often the most emotionally perceptive people in any room. They became so attuned to reading other people's emotional states because their survival, at some level, once depended on it. They know when you are tired. They know when you are stressed before you say a word. They adjust themselves around your emotional weather constantly, almost without thinking. But they cannot receive the same attunement in return. Not because the people around them are incapable, but because they never let anyone practice it on them. Every time someone gets close to the real thing, the "I'm fine" comes out like a reflex, and the door closes. Does any part of you recognize this? Not as something that happens occasionally, but as something that runs quietly underneath most of your interactions? There is research that explains why this pattern feels so difficult to break even when you can see it clearly. Psychologist James Gross at Stanford University has spent years studying what he calls emotion regulation strategies, the ways people manage what they feel and what they show. His work found that suppression, pushing feelings down before they surface, comes with a significant physiological cost. The emotion does not disappear. The body continues to respond to it. Heart rate, stress hormones, muscle tension, all of it continues as though the feeling is fully present, because it is. The only thing that changed is that it became invisible to the outside world. You are still carrying the full weight of it. You are just carrying it alone and pretending the weight is not there. This is why people who chronically say I'm fine often experience a very particular kind of exhaustion, not the tiredness that comes from doing too much, a deeper tiredness. The tiredness of maintaining a version of yourself that requires constant management, the effort of making sure nothing leaks through, of being fine in front of everyone you know while being something else entirely in private. And the private moments are when it all surfaces, alone in the car, late at night, in the middle of something completely unrelated, because feelings that are pushed down do not disappear. They just find different exits. So what does someone actually need when they say, I'm fine, but mean something else entirely? This is where most people get it wrong. The instinct when someone seems closed off is to ask more direct questions, to push a little, to try to crack the door open with the right words. But research on emotional disclosure suggests that pressure almost never works. What actually works is something much quieter: consistent safety. The slow, repeated demonstration that your presence is not conditional on the other person being okay, that you will not become overwhelmed by their truth, that you will not treat their honesty as a burden or an inconvenience or something to be quickly fixed. People who say I'm fine have almost always, at some point, told someone the truth and regretted it. The truth made things awkward. The truth made the other person uncomfortable. The truth changed how someone looked at them or treated them, and so the calculus became clear. Fine is easier. Fine keeps things smooth. Fine protects the relationship, even at the cost of any real intimacy inside it. If you are someone who does this, I want you to hear something clearly. The habit made sense when you built it. It was not weakness. It was intelligence applied to the circumstances you were in. You figured out very early what the environment could hold, and you adjusted accordingly. That was not a failure. That was survival. But you are likely not in the same environment anymore. And the strategy that once kept you safe may now be the main thing keeping you from being known by the people who would actually stay if you let them. The work is not about oversharing. It is not about making yourself vulnerable with everyone. It is about finding, slowly and carefully, one person with whom the real answer is safe, and practicing, in small doses, the terrifying act of saying something true, not fine, something true. The two words that end more conversations than any argument ever could, and the quiet, lifelong cost of reaching for them before you even check if they are honest.